Oh, there he is.
Rick.
Are you guys? Can you guys hear me or what?
We can hear you.
Loud and clear. We were just having a discussion actually on the pronunciation of your name.
Beato?
Thank
Beato.
you.
Oh,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Pratt got it right.
Yeah, of course.
Well,
you've been Rick Beato in my life for so long.
Gary, come on.
I'm afraid
seriously?
you're gonna have to change it.
You know, I say my name almost every episode because
that's right.
For my entire life.
I don't listen.
I've been
I mean, I listen to the episodes.
He's too busy working out the shapes. He's just trying to work out the chord shapes.
Nor should you listen. I always say it because people say Beato all the time. Then they have. I went to a function at my 12-year-old school. She played on the basketball team. They went to give her an award, and they said Layla Beato, and I looked at her and I was like,
yeah. It's the spelling. You need some kind of accent over the A or something.
That's right.
Or a Y. A Y.
We were also
you can't, but it's just the most such a musical. It looks so beautiful. It's so 50s, isn't it? It's so kind of beat poet, isn't it?
It is.
Or Beat poets, as I believe.
It's probably why he loves the Beatles so much. Or should I say the Beatles?
The Beatles. Isn't it weird that it's...
Yeah. And do you like Beat It by Michael Jackson? although Beat It makes it something else, doesn't it?
I like that.
We were just having a very brief chat before you came on about the Trump Springsteen thing that's going on and spat, and how, in many ways, it's actually a return of the rock star versus the man.
I saw this come up on my phone today. I don't know anything about it, nor do I ever comment about politics.
Yeah. I get it.
Of course not.
Of
course not.
Yes,
thank you for coming on, Rick.
Thank you for having me.
Rick. There's something I want to from listening. I was listening to an interview recently, and there was something we talked about last week. We've both been to see Stephen Wilson twice, right? Because we love his show so much. But Gary was making the point. The problem that we musicians have is that you go to a gig and all you're thinking is, what's that phaser setting? And is he using the bridge pickup? And what voice? Right. And I said, for me, that's why I enjoy classical concerts so much. Because if I'm sitting there watching Mahler's Fifth, I'm just getting lost. I'm like a punter.
You're not saying what kind of rosin are they using, right?
Exactly. Whereas you don't have that option, do you? Because you are just as well versed in classical music as a musician as anything else, aren't you?
Yeah. I started out in classical music, and then I went to jazz. I have undergrad degree in classical music, bass, then a master's in jazz guitar, and then, of course, I played in rock bands when I was a kid, back in the 70s. So, and then I worked as a music producer for 25 years. So I kind of have all the different things about knowing all the gear, knowing how to record, knowing how to mix, and being involved in all these different genres of music.
But I think what Guy's saying is, in a way, our musicianship is a hindrance to listening to music, because you can't just go and let it envelop you and move you. It's often you're being too analytical.
In the first place, do the thing it did before you could do it.
Yeah, when you were a kid.
Yeah, you kind of, people ask me, Rick, do you analyze things when you listen to them? And I said, no, I just listen to them. But if I want to turn on that part of my brain, then I can turn it on, and I can know what's going on. I can understand what people are playing, what the melody's doing, what the chord progressions are, stuff like that. But when I'm talking to you guys here and I'm looking at you, I am constantly thinking, is my head size the same size as yours in the picture? Because I'm so used to doing videos that as a video maker, you think about all these other things, like are all three of our head sizes the same? How's our lighting? Am I lit the same as Gary? How's Guy? Guy's mic is really huge, but you don't see my mic, and they're wearing big headphones, but I'm not. Is that weird?
This is great. Yeah. This is great for anyone who hasn't got any video, because you just could be saying, Is that really his thumb?
Right.
You mentioned it though, Rick. And before we get into the amazing YouTube career that you've developed for yourself, and how much you give to guys like me who are, you know, fascinated by music being broken down. And just you mentioned how you got a great education. What was your inroad into music? Where did you first get turned on, if you remember?
So this is very funny because I'm about to have a conversation later this afternoon with my old orchestra director, his name's Ken Brown. He's probably 70, 78 or so. And when I was in third grade, the school I went to, the elementary school, gave this music aptitude test to all the third graders. And it was called the Seashore test. And they tested for pitch, for rhythm, for musical memory. They would play 3 notes. First of all, they do things where they do these half steps, and they would keep shrinking them to where if you could tell, some of them would be 5 cents apart. Is the second note higher or lower? Okay. And you'd have to have a really discriminating ear to be able to tell. And this guy, Charles Seashore, came up with this thing back in the 1920s. And it was a 30-minute LP that they would put on. This is 1971. I took this thing. And so all the third graders, 200 of them from my school, my elementary school, sat in the cafeteria with this paper, and we'd fill it in with a pencil, and they would do 3 notes. Which note is different? They play 1 3-note pattern, and then they play one with 1 note altered. And then they did 4-note patterns. We didn't know what was going on. So the people that scored the highest on this got to play instruments. Okay. Because there were so many people in our school district in upstate New York, Rochester, where I'm from, but this town called Fairport. All the kids, so we had 3,000 people in our high school, we had a wind ensemble, concert band, orchestra, and chorus, each of which had about 70 members. Everyone got private lessons once a week. Everyone were provided instruments. This public school. Okay.
Wow.
Which is amazing.
It is.
This is why I'm a musician, because it was determined that I had high music aptitude. I was one of the group of people. The people with the highest scores got to play string instruments, and then the next group got to play wind instruments starting in 5th grade. So I started in 4th grade. So that's why I'm here talking to you.
Can I just to tell you my experience of going to state school is that there was me with my guitar, and there was one other kid who played music. He brought his violin in every day. He was called Neil Barnes, and there was another kid in the year 2 or 3 years above him who used to beat this kid up for bringing the violin in. Anyway, I go off and become, songwriter for Spandau Ballet. Neil becomes the keyboard player in left field, and the guy who used to beat up on Neil becomes the guitarist in Madness. But that was the only musicians in the band, right, in the school.
Well, there you go. That
yeah.
It's
but what about music? As far as rock music is concerned, where and your guitar playing, I guess.
So I'm from a family of 7. I'm the second youngest. So my siblings go from my 2 oldest sisters, 72 and 71, and it's basically 1 a year, the first 5, and then there's this gap, and then I have a younger brother that's 4 years younger than me. So my older siblings listen to all different things. My sister's the Beatles. My first memories are the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, all British music from the
invasion.
1960s, the British invasion. Yes, this is it. Obsessed with that, and as I was, the first single I ever bought was Angie, the Rolling Stones. Goat's Head Soup, 1971. If you think about the stuff that was coming up, my first memories of I remember, here's the latest single from the Beatles from their new record. It's called Hey Jude. Hey Jude. And then it just comes right on AM radio. And there are guys working at some house on our street. And I hear it and I was like, that's the new Beatles song. This is and I was, I was 5 years old or whatever when it came out. And
I remember watching it on TV when it was put out live, wasn't it, on television?
Yeah. So that's how I got into music, and all my siblings like different kinds of music, Motown, rock, Southern rock. My brother, one of my older brothers was very into Frank Sinatra and Bobby Darin and that kind of stuff. And my dad was all completely into bebop. That's what he loved. And my mom loved classical music, listened to opera all the time. So, so that was our house. 3-bedroom house with 9 people and 1 bathroom.
How many?
One record
How many
player.
record players?
A lot of record players.
Oh,
A lot of cassette players.
of course.
That was the we had a lot of record players in the house. Everybody kind of had a record player in their room.
So, and since you went down, you start with a classical route and then a jazz route. Was it just like, well, was it in a way career-wise? You were just like, well, music is where I'm at. Music is what I do in whatever form that takes, and you were just always moving forward with that.
No, so I got picked to play the cello. So I started playing that, and I'm just like typical. I never practice. I bring my, I go to school, bring my cello and everything. I didn't practice. The teacher gets mad at me, the typical stuff. But I loved playing in the orchestra. It was fun. So then when I was in 8th grade, I broke my ankle the first day of summer vacation, and I'm sitting there, and I remember the '76 Olympics were on, and I'm there, and
Mark Spitz. Oh, no, that
Mark
was 72.
Spitz. No,
Was that
Mark
76?
Spitz. No, Mark Spitz was 72.
So yeah, along with Olga Corbett.
Olga Corbett, yes. Right, people are like, who? What?
Yeah.
So,
Not on our show.
So my brother had this cheap $1 guitar sitting in the corner, and my orthopedic guy was like, yo, you're going to be in the cast the whole summer. I'm like, oh my God. So I'm sitting there watching the Olympics, and I got this guitar with a little chord, Mellobay chord book, and I start figuring out chords. But since I played the cello, I didn't have I had calluses already, so it didn't hurt my fingers. So immediately I'm like, oh, this is A minor, D, E minor, G. And I was like, A minor, that sounds like Angie. Oh, that's definitely the first chord of that. And then I'm like, oh, this song's Stairway to Heaven. Oh, this song is this. And as soon as I play C, then I play G, I was like, well, that sounds like Stairway to Heaven. I start figuring these things out. Then I realize I can figure out any song. And then, then I've got Night at the Opera. I've got Frampton Comes Alive. I've got all these records that had come out that at that time period, 75, 76. And then I'm like, I can figure out any of these songs. So by the time summer vacation
Only there was
over,
a way of sharing this with the world. If there's like something through a screen or
exactly. Wait till the computer gets invented, and then the internet, and then YouTube, and so all that stuff. So when I went back to school in the fall, it's like, oh, I'm an actual musician now. This is kind of what I do. And then I started playing in bands immediately within 6 months. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of, that was my
you went off
introduction.
Where did you go then? You went off to college to study music.
Yeah.
Properly.
So I studied, I went to Ithaca College, which is near Rochester. It's about an hour and a half away, to do a music ed degree in classical bass. So I got a degree in teaching all the string instruments, violin, viola, cello, and bass, to be like a, orchestra conductor and stuff. And then I did my student teaching, and I said, I'm never going to do this. So then it's like, okay, I want to go to school and get a degree in jazz guitar. So I'm going to do that. So I went to New England Conservatory in Boston, and I was obsessed with playing jazz guitar then at that point. Even though I played in rock bands in this, I played all the, covers and everything like everybody did in bands in the 70s and all different types of music. So I went to school and I got a jazz guitar degree. And then I got a gig teaching back at Ithaca College where I did my undergrad. And I did that for 5 years until a guy named Howard Thompson, who is a British A&R guy at Elektra Records, heard a demo that a buddy of mine and I had done. 8-song demo that he listened to by accident. And he says, you guys have hit songs, but before I spend, money on you, I want to give you $5,000 to do a demo, give us a demo deal. And I want to see you guys play. So I'm going to book you a gig at CBGB's in New York. And
very cool.
And that's how my life changed in 1989, basically. And I ended up leaving my teaching gig in 92. I got signed to a publishing deal with Polygram and moved to New York City, tried to make it as a songwriter and in bands. And then I failed at that. Then I moved to Atlanta in 94. And then I finally got put a band together when I was 37 years old or 36 years old, got signed, made a record, got dropped immediately in 1999. And then I'm like, what am I going to do? And then I started producing bands because one of my friends was like, why don't you produce bands? It's like, because I don't know anything about recording. Well, just learn. So I basically went to bookstores and I would take out any recording magazine I could have and I would just read them and I would write notes down because I couldn't afford to buy them. And then I would go to studios and I would ask people questions.
Wow. Were you that kid though that could sit and hear Jeff Skunk Baxter guitar solo and work it out immediately?
Oh, yeah. I could figure out anything. When I was in, I'm not bragging, but when I was within 6 months of playing guitar, I figured out Kid Charlemagne, Larry Carlton. I learned, I had this kid that I met that was a drummer, and he gives me 9 songs to learn for our first practice. It was like, it was Don't Take Me Alive, Steely Dan, Long Distance Runaround, yes. Wouldn't Want to Be Like You, Alan Parsons Project. It was just all these unrelated songs. And I came to this rehearsal at his house, and his brother, who was a really good guitar player, is a few years older than us, was like, how did you figure those things out? These guitars, Larry Carlton guitar. It's like, I just listened to it and figured, why is that hard? And
would you slow it down?
No.
That you heard all the increments?
Yeah. I didn't know
fantastic.
It was difficult. I just was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's what he's doing this. He must play it here. But I could figure out all the notes, no problem.
So there's no mystery for you in music. That's an interest. So you with any music you hear, you've got this immediate overview of what it is, what's happening.
No. Like I said earlier, if I'm listening to something, there are songs.
Oh, that's true. You turn it off. Yeah.
There are songs that I've done breakdowns of that I've listened to for 50 years and I never learned how to play. It never even occurred to me to learn to play it. There's so many songs, pop songs famous songs, that Beatles songs, whatever, that I never learned to play, never thought about learning how to play. And then I listen,
Yeah. I know. I must say, there's an example, one of yours, because I mean, we love what makes this song great. There's one I realized. Well, I guess I had the same thing. One of my favorite songs, obviously because it's off my favorite album ever, is "Love Rain O'er Me" of Quadrophenia, and it was great when you break that down. I said, "Right, actually, it's too close. I've never done that." It's like I never realized that how brilliant that guitar part is, like how long it goes down and how it starts coming back up.
It's amazing, and I don't want it to ruin it for me by figuring it out. So a lot of these songs I've done breakdowns of, I've never figured out.
Right.
And of course, when you're a songwriter, as I am myself, and you're not considering those details. It's just a flow. Yeah. Right? It's a flow that comes out of you, and this suits me. Now, where do I want to go here? Because the lyric does this. I really want to go there, and you're not analyzing it. But what makes it good or bad, I guess, is having an instinct.
Yeah. The writing process. And I'm always fascinated every time I interview someone about what is the process? What makes a great melody? What do you think is a perfect song? I always ask people that. Most of the time I do. If I think of it, the first interview I ever did, like on my channel, that was a proper interview, was with Peter Frampton back in 2018. And I said, Peter, what is it? Tell me a perfect song, a song you think is perfect. He immediately says Whiter Shade of Pale. It's a perfect song. And And if I'm writing, I never think about, oh, I should go to this chord or go to that chord. I never think of that stuff either. It's like, does this have a vibe? And that's it. So it's like you turn off one part of your brain and then you go to the creative side.
Perfect song has to have really good structure, and that's when actually your objective mind starts to work. So you're working, a verse is coming at you, a chorus is coming at you, a bridge, a middle eight, maybe there was stuff happening. Then it's like, but hang on, what's the structure of this song? And you have to step outside.
Right. Yeah. Then you start thinking kind of like a producer in a way, right? It's more than maybe more than just a songwriter. It's a what actually makes a song. What should the form be? Because song structure is so important to making something memorable. If it's supposed to be memorable, maybe not everything is supposed to be memorable. So so that's, and when you hit on something, do you really know if it's a hit song? Most of the people I've interviewed don't know that.
But there's also the thing you said, because pop music in essence, which is like the thing that originally sort of turned us on, that was, you weren't thinking of like great pieces of music that were going to stay with you for your whole life. The whole, because the perfect song then when we were kids was that piece of music that you came down and you sat and you listened to it 80 times in a row, and then you maybe never listened to it ever again. In a way, that was what you were looking for, that thing that you loved it so much, and you sat there watching the record go round as you were listening to it, wasn't it? That's
Yeah. This is a thing that my kids, when my kids were young, I have 3 kids, a boy and 2 girls. And when they were young, they would ask, all young kids, when they're infants, want to hear things, want to watch movies over and over. They want to listen to songs over and over. And then they get to this point where they say to me, why are you listening to the song again? I'm like, what do you mean? I'll listen to a song 1,000 times in a row and I still have get the same feeling from it. I'll listen to a song from 50 years ago that I've listened to 1,000,000 times and still get the same feeling from it. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. It's funny when you say, what's the perfect song? My mind automatically goes back to the Great American Songbook and maybe those old great Jewish songwriters, with come over from Eastern Europe, and how, that craft of making, fantastic songs for musicals or whatever it might be. It seems that possibly there was a slight dumbing down as the songwriting developed into the 60s and 70s already, because I know that's one of your things about
harmonically, certainly, since
lyrically.
Yeah. So music has just gotten progressively simpler since then. People, when you go back to the predecessors of us, the people the generation before us, you go to the Beatles, for example. They are the stuff they grew up with. Lennon and Ringo were born in 1940, McCartney 1942, George Harrison 1943. So what music were their parents listening to? Because that's really where you start. Right. And they were listening to those standards, All the Things You Are, Stella by Starlight, The Song Is You, There'll Never Be Another You, Here's That Rainy Day, all the famous jazz standards and things like that their parents listened to that were big band music and stuff. And then you have skiffle happen. And then it's like, well, then then that ends up becoming the beginning of British invasion, I guess, right? With that mixed with American blues and American rock and roll. So these, but those chord structures of the American songbook music that Gary's talking about is what the people that are 80 years old, 84, Ringo's going to be 85. I mean, it's really blows my mind, right? So these guys, Lennon would be 85 if he were alive. These are the things that they heard. And when they hear these line cliches that you hear or Jimmy Page, you hear in Stairway to Heaven, the beginning of that was very common in the American songbook. These songs of the 30s and 40s that were
the chromatic
musicals.
Rundown.
The chromatic rundown, yes. We call a line cliche in jazz, but it just has the chromatic movement and stuff. So once those things were done over and over. Then the songwriters of the 70s kind of started to use those. They started to incorporate different stuff. And then in the 80s, when you start bringing in synthesizers and things like that, and then there's this whole new palette of writing songs that based around sounds, right? And you have drum machines. You get the
drum machine patterns.
Drum machine patterns. Yes.
Phil Collins.
Peter Gabriel wrote.
Peter Gabriel.
Biko, for instance, was a drum machine.
Not Biako.
Right, Biako. I like that. So I don't know. I think about this stuff all the time, and those song breakdowns and what makes this song great things really helped my channel explode. I got all these multi-tracks from a guy that traded them. I never tell the story or anything, but some guy at a studio, I won't say where, had a friend that did transfers of multi-tracks, and they gave him, and I heard him playing Kurt Cobain's Smells Like Teen Spirit, the voice soloed. I was like, what is that? He's like, oh, it's the multi-track to Smells Like Teen Spirit. Where'd you get that from? I can't tell you. I'm like, what do you mean? And so he said, wait, you have the whole multi-track? And he shows me, and he's got them in Pro Tools. Yeah, a friend of mine was doing transfers at a studio in LA for these labels of all these different things. He showed me his hard drive that had like 2,500 songs.
I remember there was a thing when these things suddenly appeared.
Yeah, Marvin Gaye was around, wasn't it?
And
it was like
Bohemian Rhapsody.
Fame. I remember a friend of mine had Fame. That was God, that's amazing.
So, but like the Bohemian Rhapsody ones, they were out of sync. So you had to kind of bring them into Pro Tools and get them lined up. And so, but this guy was like, no, I can't give them to you. And then I had a kick and a snare sample from a famous American mixer. I won't say who it was. And he said, wait, you have his kick and snare sample? I'm like, yes. Oh, I'll trade you these.
Bob Clear Mountain?
No, it wasn't Bob Clear Mountain.
All right.
So I traded two things that are this long, right? For 20, think about that, for 2,500 songs that years later, when I started my YouTube channel, 10 years later, I would start this, 12 years later, start this What Makes This Song Great series. It's kind of crazy, right? And they're sitting on a hard drive for 12 years. And I was like, oh,
I'm interested in what we were talking about earlier, and this idea of going from the classical to that vaudeville sound, to the American Songbook, to the Beatles, and that we're somehow simplifying as the generations go on, because we're just listening to the distillation.
Right.
Always.
And now people
do you think that's possible?
Yes, absolutely. Now people want to have AI write their songs for them, right? So it's like this is not easy enough just to have a verse and a chorus now in a song. We'll just have AI write. And because I've talked with songwriters, big name songwriters recently that I have not interviewed, but that are using AI to help them write songs now, which is insane to me.
Something you said, that if someone says I used AI to help me write the song, then you can't say you wrote the song.
Right. I know.
Absolutely. I can't understand how anyone would want to, of course I can understand it, because a lot of the songwriting that goes on now is an industry. I don't know whether that is necessarily any different to the songwriters that wrote for artists who never wrote back in the sort of 50s and early 60s, but there is a room where people are churning stuff out, maybe in Nashville, maybe in Sweden, and they're desperate for ideas. They're just looking for anything that they can form a backing track with. But for me, songwriting is a therapy. It's sorting other things out in my own head that AI I could not even deal with. But anyway.
But talking about how things change, like the dumbing down thing, you also get structural changes, don't you? Which is like basically since the 90s, the mid late has sort of become a thing of the past. And now, because of TikTok, the intro has become a thing of the past.
That's right.
And I used to live for intros.
Yes.
There's loads of songs like once the song's in, I'm done.
It's we used to call them signatures. I had a buddy that used to say that's a signature is the intro, the kind of the first thing you hear. And my biggest video on my channel is the top 20 acoustic guitar intros of all time.
Yeah.
Right. And that's about the intro. Right. And you think about the Stairway to Heaven or Angie, or all these songs, these classic songs that have,
acoustic intros.
They have acoustic guitars, and people used to spend so much time figuring out something that's memorable to start the song with, and then they write a great song after that.
But this isn't new though, Rick, because if you think back before rock and roll, there was always the pre-song verse. A Noel Coward song,
Yes.
it would have the setup verse, wouldn't it? And they dropped that. We dropped that.
Well, a lot of jazz tunes historically jazz musicians would start any of the standards. They start with the bridge, the B section, as they called it, because most songs were AABA4. Most jazz tunes are. And it'd be, 16.
Like Yesterday.
Yes, exactly. So, so in jazz, you would start with the bridge as your intro. And anytime I play jazz gigs, you would just know, we'll start there. If it's All the Things You Are, you start with the B section. That's your intro. But now that's been dispensed with. And you think about so many amazing songs, like, the songs that the bridge is the best part of the song. I think I just have the Beatles songs always just come to mind with me. So,
yeah. Well, you say the bridge, we say the middle eight.
Middle eight, same thing.
Yeah. We call the pre-chorus. We call the bridge.
Oh, I hate that.
Pre-chorus.
Pre-chorus. We call the bridge. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, like "Get Into the Groove" by Madonna has the middle eight twice.
Yes.
You obviously know your audience, and you're not, because there is a thing about people who are successful on YouTube like yourself, or in what we do as podcasters and social media, where you want to try and appeal to the widest audience demographic as possible. And yet I think you just decided that there's a young demographic that isn't for you, and you're quite honest and open about being disparaging about new songs and new writing.
Well, here's the thing, is that if a song is good, I can say it, if a new song, because I love production, being a producer, and I will try to find something good if it's good. And it's usually, if I don't like the song, there's a production element. There's plenty of artists that are contemporary artists that I do like. I just had Zed in here, who's a producer, DJ, and he had a song called The Middle that he did with Maren Morris. He had a song Clarity, Foxes, that was a hit back in 2012. That's a beautiful song, EDM song. It was a number one singles. I love Max Martin, and I love people that are great songwriters like that, and that are but if something's bad, I say it.
But the production gets squashed nowadays, doesn't it? I mean, everyone
Yes.
is stuck through the computer.
Yes.
And there's a homogenization that we didn't grow up with, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's because what people are listening to, though, isn't it? It's what they're listening on. This is the first that started to go backwards.
The same thing, like with the complexity.
Yeah.
And then everybody's gone back from. No one has stereos. My kids, I have 20 sets of monitors here. Do you guys want some speakers in your rooms? You can listen to stereo. Why would we want that? And they're listening on their earbuds or listening on a little.
Well, just on the phone. That's the thing. It's almost like people just want the idea of music. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And Guy, they're never going to hear the bass on that, No,
That's
I know.
right. Well, that's why I always listen to Guy's music on my phone. But anyway,
you need to only hear it on the phone.
Yeah. You know what I think is well, I'll tell you what I think is the Beatles were really one of the first visible visual bands, obviously Little Richard, and suddenly people are starting to see artists on TV, but fundamentally you're only getting to hear their music. If you have a choice of looking at the Beatles, of playing the Beatles, it has to be on record. It's audio only. And that's how the 70s were. It was right up until MTV, right? But since then, it seems to me that music has taken on less and less importance. And what it's there for is simply a marketing means to sell a personality.
Well, to accompany a visual.
It's about the person that is, about the Taylor Swift, or it's not about the song even.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I had this I drive my 12-year-old Layla to school every day, and a couple months ago, she's like, hey, can you play the song Headlock by Imogen Heap? And I said, yeah, why? Well, I heard it on YouTube Shorts, and I want to hear what the whole song sounds like. So I put it on, and I said, that record came out in 2005. And so we're listening to it, and she's like, oh, this is how the beginning goes. And we listened to the whole thing. And I said, there's a song called Hide and Seek that was really the song that people listen to off that record. And it's of this vocoder song, beautiful song. So I'm playing it, and she's like, yeah, I've never heard this. And all of a sudden it gets to 2 minutes and 45 seconds. And then she starts singing along with this 15-second section that she knew from YouTube Shorts. She's like, oh my God, I know this song. And she knew every word of the middle eight. And that was the only part of the song. She's like, oh, that's how the rest of the song goes. Right.
Yeah. So, forget that bit.
And I said,
I just like the middle bit.
So I said, Layla, how did you hear this Headlock song that came out 20 years ago? She goes, I saw it on a couple videos on YouTube Shorts. What videos? Send me the videos. So she sent me 3 videos, and they had hashtag Headlock. 2 of them were anime videos that accompanied these anime things, but they used different parts of the song, but roughly the same sections. Another one was by a YouTuber that had 3 million subscribers, influencer, whatever you call it. And those were the things that she heard it from. And they blew up from there, and people started using that music to accompany their videos. And that's how the song blew up again. So it's fascinating. But I want to hear the whole song.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing we were talking about a few weeks ago, I mentioned this. I'd read some thing about a part of the brain that doesn't fully develop until people are in their late 20s, and that's why we're fearless when we're younger, and that's why soldiers are young men, and we take more risks. And then it just occurred to me, Guy and I were talking about it, how most bands we like, their greatest material is in their 20s.
Yes.
Maybe there's a connection.
Oh, 100%. Okay. So I have this thing. I made this video. People got mad at me about does creativity end at age 30, right? Because once again, when Lennon, in 1970, when the Beatles broke up, Lennon and Ringo were turning 30, but I think that they actually broke up. Lennon's birthday is November 9th. So they were broken up by then. So he wasn't even 30 yet. Ringo's birthday's in the summer. So the Beatles wrote all of their material, their 12 records, before they turned 30 years old, which is insane to think about, right? And most of our favorite music are people
before 34.
Yeah,
it's before 34. That's generally the cutoff point for the great for you.
Who was the oldest guy?
For your comfortably numb or whatever,
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. If you take the Exile on Main Street, 1972. Mick and Keith were 29 then, but there was like their 10th record. I mean, it's pretty amazing that. Well, people used to make records. 2 records a year, 3 records a year. Help,
yeah.
Rubber Soul and Revolver. Elton used to make 2 records a year.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, there are 2 things involved here.
Not because he wanted to, because that was his contract.
Yes.
Actually.
Yes.
And then one is you're more daring.
It was the 80s where suddenly it became about the 3-year album.
Right.
Which had to be recorded on all 5 continents.
All 5 continents, and then you have to tour for 2 years behind it.
Because they were based around incredibly complex tax structures, I think. That was.
Is that why?
I think, Rick, is you're more daring when you're under the age of 30, but also pop music and youth culture have always gone hand in hand. And, you know, the gang mentality and what are you wearing and what's my music and what are you listening to? You know, it's part of that, you know, when it's very different now, but go on.
If you look at the top 25 artists on Spotify, monthly listeners, the average age is 36 and a half. Right now, today in 2025. I just looked at it 2 weeks ago.
Okay, I can see why, actually.
The average age, because it takes till that time to actually build enough of a career to get enough mass appeal.
To afford a subscription.
Yeah, and you have people like Coldplay. Those guys are almost pushing 50. Or, you know, I mean, a lot of the people that you know, even in the hip hop thing, Drake is 37, 38 years old, and Eminem.
But they're playing records that they wrote in their 20s.
That's right.
They're still their biggest hits.
That's right. Look at Queen. Queen's got 60 million monthly listeners. They have multiple songs. They have over 2 billion plays. And these songs, Queen hasn't released when Freddie Mercury died in 1991, you know, like Nirvana is up there over 30 million monthly listeners. We're right there with the Beatles, and they haven't released a record since 1994. I mean, it's really amazing. People are True, Spandau Ballet, 500 million plays, right? It's insane. It's hard to imagine. 1983 it came out, right?
But you know, I think it's why, you know, I can see good and bad in streaming and we all know financially, you know, the difficulties, but in saying that, where else would Spandau Ballet have been played, or any of the acts of my generation and older? We wouldn't have been played on many radio stations. There's suddenly a resurgence of that music.
Yes.
So everything is now, right? My son, who's 16, I told this story the other week. You know, I was calling him, I'm coming home from the theater. I want to know, is he in bed yet? He's got to go to school tomorrow. I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm listening to Can't Buy a Thrill on vinyl. I'm like, what? Anyway, the other night he got George Harrison's album out, Living in the Material World. He's going, Dad, who's this? Who's Nicky Hopkins? Who's who's Jim Keltner? You know, I mean, and he's looking at this, and we're sitting listening to the vinyl. He would only gone back there if it was for Spotify and Apple Music, because that's opened up this whole other world of music to him.
There's one little ranty point I want to get into, and I'm surprised that people aren't on this more. The one thing to do with streaming is the whole thing, there's no credits anywhere or anything. Why?
Well, there is credits on Apple Music now. There is.
On Apple Music.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
No.
But it's like, it should be an absolute given. I find it extraordinary that way that's just accepted.
Yeah, Spotify is crap with the credits.
Yeah. It's like it should be, that should have been written into the whatever agreements the labels did. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it reflects badly on everyone.
Yes. I mean, to know, as far as people playing on tunes, to know that Nicky Hopkins played on any of these records, like, how would you even know that? That stuff should be right on Spotify. It should immediately come up who all the artists, who all the musicians were that played on these records. People should know Elliot Randall played Reelin' in the Years, I Can't Buy a Thrill, and that Denny Diaz
Lee
played
Sklar,
whoever. You know, and I know all this stuff because I stared at the back of albums my entire youth.
Of course.
We all did. And you know, but at least your 16-year-old Gary is going back and listening to. My kids don't care when things came out. They'll listen to anything, and I think it's amazing. They don't care when music came out. Doesn't matter to them. They listen to it if they like it.
But it also means you can't. Anyway, never mind. No, that's a red herring. Go on.
Rick, how did it begin? How did you become this YouTube star?
Well, this one is because it's his kids. That's what was the next question. Yeah, this is amazing. I think it's amazing, your first video.
So I was on the school board at my son's school, and I was going to a school board meeting, and I was working with this guy named Shane, country artist, doing a song. Dylan had come down into the studio and I was like, hey, check this out, Shane. And I play a thing and Dylan's like, A flat major over A major. And Shane's like, what? And I said, yeah, Dylan, what note is this? What note is this? And Dylan's annoyed. He was 8 years old. And anyway, so he goes back upstairs. So when we're finishing our session, Shane said, hey, can you make a video of Dylan doing this so I can show my wife, Angie? I was like, yeah. So I go up and I'm going to go to the school board meeting. It's about 6 o'clock or so. And I said, Dylan, come downstairs. I want to make this video with you. No, I don't want to. And I was like, it's going to take 1 minute. No, I don't want to. I said, Nina, I said to my wife, can you tell Dylan to come downstairs and just do this thing? She's like, what are you going to do? I want to make a video to show my friend Shane's wife. It'll take 1 minute, literally. Dylan, go downstairs. So Dylan comes down here. I put up my iPhone and I said, okay, here. And Dylan sits with his back to me and I make this video. It's 1:20 minutes. Put it up on my Facebook page. Before I didn't put it up on YouTube. Put it up on Facebook. I go to the meeting. I call Shane. Hey, I put it up there. You can show Angie. The thing's over, and Shane calls me up at like 9 o'clock. He's like, "It's a viral video." I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "It's got 5,000 views." I'm like, 5,000 views? That's not a viral video. He said, "You only have 30 followers on Facebook." And I was like, he goes, "Watch, it'll be a viral video by tomorrow." So he calls me the next morning and he goes, "It's got 22,000 views." I told you it's a viral video. Shane, that's not a viral video. He goes, "Check your friend requests on Facebook." So I look at it. I said, "God, I got like 5,000 friend requests." And he goes, "Wait till tonight." And then that night, millions and millions. It got like 80 million views on Facebook. It was insane.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And I had 250,000 comments. 250,000 comments, even on YouTube, that's hard to believe, right? And and all of a sudden we're going to the store and people are like, "Oh my God, it's Dylan." And Dylan's like, "What's wrong with these people?" He was 8 years old. People recognize him as we're at the IKEA in town. And my wife's like, "What's wrong with these people?" I said, "They saw the video." And it's got like 80 million views. And so people from universities were writing to me, "How did you teach him to do this stuff?" Because he knew the theory behind it. That was the thing. He's got insane perfect pitch. And I was like, I'll teach Dylan music theory. I used to teach music theory. It's like, "Hey, Dylan, anytime you hear C-E-G, it's C major. Okay, it doesn't matter what the order is. Okay, I got it. Anytime you hear G, B flat, D, it's G minor. Okay, if I play the two chords together, just say the two chords, whatever." So I taught him the music theory and that was it. So,
and then you fired him.
Then I fired him. So 6 months later, I started YouTube, but I only started YouTube with I had 43 subscribers on my YouTube channel.
Isn't there something behind where perhaps his musical knowledge comes from before that? Wasn't there something to do with when he was in the womb?
Yes. So when he was in the womb, I put these headphones on my wife's stomach and I played. It was all this really highly complex music. It was really, a lot of it was this friend of mine named Aiden Essen, who's the most brilliant improviser and pianist that I've ever heard. And that people don't know. He lives in Istanbul. He's one of my best friends from college. And I thought, if a baby listened to this, will it sound normal? And I would play. Then when Dylan was born, I would sit with him in the mornings. I'd listen to Bach. I'd listen to Charlie Parker, John Coltrane, all this stuff. And I just dance around with him and stuff. And then I would come, then we'd start working on the production during the day and everything. And then I realized when he was 3 that he had perfect pitch, because he was just in the car. "Hey, Dylan, sing this song." He'd sing. I was like, "That's in the right key." So anyways,
But you teach perfect pitch, don't you?
I don't know.
It's something you can teach people.
No, you can't teach perfect pitch. I think perfect pitch to me is developed, I believe, within the first 9 months of a baby's life. That all babies are born and then they lose it if they don't learn the names of the notes.
There's the thing I've heard you say before, and it's about in the first 9 months. This is absolutely about however many 67,000 or whatever possible phonetic sounds there are that you can make.
Yes,
a baby is that will cut across any language or any culture. 6,500.
Yes, 6,500, and there are 20.
You explain.
There's so. All babies, I saw this YouTube video by a woman named Patricia Kuhl. She's a linguist, and she had this video called The Linguistic Genius of Babies. This is after I realized Dylan had perfect pitch. I was like, why does Dylan have perfect pitch when no one in my family No one in my wife's family has it. Why does he have it? And I found this video, The Linguistic Genius of Babies. And she says that all babies are born with the ability to hear the phonemes of all languages spoken on Earth's 6,500 languages. There's 2,200 phonemes. Phonemes would be in the English language. We use, 26 phoneme. They're things that make up syllables. And I thought, but babies begin to lose the ability at 9 months, and they become culturally bound listeners. They can only hear the phonemes that they hear in the languages spoken in their household. So I thought, well, music is a language, and then people that speak Mandarin, which is a tonal language, have a 30% higher incidence of perfect pitch, which is 1 in 10,000 people, than people in non-tonal speaking languages. So I thought, oh, well, that must be that because music is a tonal language, that babies that are exposed to more complex music in the first 9 months of their life have a higher incidence of perfect pitch. But you have to associate the names to them within the first 6 years of life.
My son who's 13, my 13-year-old who plays saxophone, plays jazz sax, he just surprised me about a year ago, and he said he named all the colors of all the notes, and he hears all the music he plays in different colors.
Synesthesia.
So if it's you got to go to C sharp, oh, that's purple, I know,
Synesthesia,
and that's how
synesthesia.
he hears it. Yeah. But when you first started, Rick, you started as a teacher on YouTube, didn't you? Because I
Yes.
followed you a bit, and trying to work out those goddamn modes and mode and scales, and but that's rather than someone who interviewed, rather than someone who was a personality, really, which is someone who's entitled to their own opinions.
Yeah. So I only did teaching videos for the first year and a half that were only basically music, classical music theory, jazz theory, teaching about modes, ear training, all this kind of stuff. And then one day I was like, I'll do a multi-track breakdown. And I started my What Makes This Song Great series.
What was the first one? What was the first song?
First song was a Blink 182 song called All the Small Things. And it has this synthesizer part in it that people don't hear. And I came to it like a producer. And it just happened to be the first one. I had the tracks there, and I put it up. I said,
with everything you said, that's not really what most people would see coming.
No,
as your first song.
That's right.
Also, was it from that old hard drive that you'd got?
Yes.
Right.
It was the first song that came up. I'm like, I'll do a video of this because nobody hears this weird dissonance, this octave thing that Roger Manning, who was Jellyfish's keyboard player, he was a session player on it, and there's this hidden octave part in it. I was like, in this 3-part harmony, there's this dissonant C over the G chord, and that really grabs your ear. And they're singing B in the harmonies, and you hear this flat 9 interval that's really dissonant. Do you hear this? And people are like, oh my God, that's so cool. And then I just play along with it. And then I did the second tune I did was Kid Charlemagne. And I break down all the parts, Chuck Rainey's part, Bernard Purdy's drum part, Larry Carlton's solo. I put the music up there. I transcribed the piano part, the drum part, all this stuff. I put it on there. Then I showed the guitar solo. And this is when I started getting people. Then I did like Rosanna was the third song I did. I just did all these unrelated songs. I didn't know if I could do it legally on YouTube, but I did it. And some of the videos, and I did Metallica, and I couldn't do the Beatles. I couldn't do AC/DC. I was like, okay.
Because of copyright reasons?
Yes. You can't, they take your video down. And then I did a Zeppelin song.
Because because when I did, during the pandemic, when I did these lockdown lick videos, when I would show you how I played songs, and they get taken down, then they'd find out it was me and it would go back up. But it did mean I never saw a penny.
Right. So I never saw any money from those videos or anything. Yeah. So, but then I had a video that I did Ramble On, and I was like, this will probably get taken down. And then it got taken down. And then I made a video about Ramble On being taken down, and then it got put up the next day. It got put back up. And
But is it an algorithm taking it down initially?
yes, yeah, bots.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but then
Biatz.
and then it was, and then there was do you remember this guy in the skateboard with Dreams by Fleetwood Mac? It was became a huge hit because of a TikTok video. And then the labels, and Fleetwood Mac was a band that took videos down. It was the Beatles, Fleetwood Mac, AC/DC, Pink Floyd, a lot of them, Queen, they would take videos down at first. And then because of that one video, the labels started to see, and I made videos complaining about it. The labels started to say, wait a minute, maybe this is actually good promotion to have these songs become viral hits again. And then they were like, okay, we'll just do content ID claims on them. And that's how that happened.
And then you started interviewing people, and that's been something we all love. And now artists are clamoring to get on your show. Who was the first guy?
So Peter Frampton, I met because a friend of mine at the AES show, which is like a gear show in New York City, where they show all the new pro audio gear, from SSL said to me, oh my God, Rick, I love your videos. And he said, I saw your Peter Frampton, a video you did on Peter Frampton. Peter's an old friend of mine. Would you like to interview him? I said, oh my God, yes. Can you connect it? He said, yeah. So he wrote Peter, and Peter wrote me back, and he's like, yeah, how about next Tuesday? And this is like on Friday. I was like, yes. So I grabbed my friend Shane that got my video started. And I was like, Shane, can you come and help me film the Peter Frampton interview? You're interviewing Peter Frampton? Yeah, up in Nashville. So we go up there and set up a couple cameras and do the interview. And that was the first one I did. So
I always like that you actually really put Peter Frampton right at the top of things, don't you? Which is, I think, is absolutely right.
I love Peter. I think he's a genius.
Man.
Yeah,
brilliant.
He's so good.
We had him on early on.
I listened to it.
Oh, right.
Yeah, no, he's so good. And you know, we still communicate, Guy. I have to say, I really like Peter. He's such a nice bloke. But what I fell in love with his guitar parts was on Rockin' the Fillmore with Humble Pie.
Yes,
and those solos were so good. Oh my God, he's not just playing in the box; he's playing the ninth as well. And he's, you know, I mean, he was just such a great player.
Yeah,
Odic as well.
So it's you know, I don't have any training in doing any of this stuff in interviewing people. I just asked all the questions that I always wondered, and that's I come at it as a fan, and that's kind of the you know, and I don't ask questions about people's personal lives. I don't care about that. I want to know about the music. I want to know about the process. And I've, you know, gotten to interview. I mean, there's so many people. I just, you know, I just, now publicists write me all the time and stuff. But, you know, one of the big things, like when I interviewed Sting, Sting's publicist reached out to me. He's like, Sting loves your channel. I want to know if you'd be interested in interviewing him. And most of the people, Brian May DM'd me on Instagram. And that's how I interviewed Brian.
Well, I have people jumping down my throat. Man, why aren't you getting David to speak to Rick Beato? Why aren't you, you know, like, and then when I did speak to David, he said, well, I just said I'd speak to him. There's no great thing.
I made the video, like, why David Gilmour won't be on my channel. And
I know, I remember that.
And the publicists were so mad at me for making that video. But I interviewed him
Rick,
2 weeks later.
Rick, do you ever wish you were in the other chair? So there's no like, damn, why didn't that band take off that I was in?
I don't care.
Because you found your niche, do you think?
Yeah. I don't, you know, occasionally I do live events. Like it's like a one-man show. I did it 2 years ago. I did it. Live Nation approached me about doing.
You came to London, didn't you?
I did come to London. I went to London, I went to Berlin, Stockholm. And then I did about 6 shows in the US, like LA and New York and Chicago, stuff like that. I'm actually going to, and then I was like, yeah, I don't like doing this. And then I talked to my agent, you know, a couple of months ago. I was like, maybe we'll do some dates over in Europe in the fall. And so he just wrote me back. He's like, okay, I have Oslo, Helsinki, Stockholm, Berlin, London. How's that? And I was like, that's good. And then a couple shows in the States. And it's fun. It's fun to get out there and
We should go, Guy.
and do that.
We should.
You
Yeah.
should.
Where are you
Okay,
playing in
yeah.
London? Do you know, Rick?
Well, yeah, if you want any participation.
I don't know yet where it's going to be. I'm waiting to find out. But I'm going to stay in London actually for probably for a week or so and do some more interviews. I have so many friends in London, and I love it over there. I just have to say that when I was a kid, I was obsessed with England, and my parents never traveled anywhere. And I thought, oh my God, am I ever going to go to London? I didn't go until I was 32 years old. And I thought, when I landed there, I thought, oh my God, this is where like all my favorite music came from, is the UK. And I've been
Did you go up to Liverpool?
so many times. I've never been to Liverpool still.
Oh,
Because every time I come, I have a million things I'm doing. But I did a video at Abbey Road. I've done, but
Have you had Paul on?
I've not had Paul on. He's another person I can't get to.
Yeah.
yeah. Join
We
the
can't
club,
have
mate.
him.
Join the club.
Yeah, join the Rick, but thank you so much for coming on our show.
Gary,
Yeah,
Guy,
really
I
good.
appreciate it. You guys are amazing. I listen to you guys all the time.
Oh,
And
Oh man, such an honor.
I've listened to you for years.
oh,
So I
That's
appreciate
great to
you.
know.
Appreciate you asking me on.
thank you. Well, also, let me tell you, and which is quite funny, with the, considering the music that you're known for, that is actually on your recommendation this morning. I've been listening to the Zimmerman version of Beethoven's Concerto No. 4, and it is amazing. You're absolutely right.
Unbelievable.
What is that? Bob Dylan's version?
Yeah. Yes.
It goes C, F, C, G.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Rick. Great to see
Thanks,
you.
gentlemen.